This episode is for anybody who's approaching real estate investing and is curious about a behind-the-scenes look into the technology that powers your acquisition strategy so that you can find really amazing deals. This is the podcast for 10xing your income, replacing your W-2 through the business model of wholesaling real estate, where you find a rundown home and you make a finder's fee for selling it to an investor that will close on it with cash. My name's David Lecco. I'm the CEO and co-host of this podcast, CEO of DealMachine, which is a tool I created 8 years ago and has helped people close their very first real estate deal over 10,000 times in all 50 states. Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm actually getting interviewed by a DealMachine member where we were in Tampa, Florida this past week for a group of the world's largest group of house flippers that do over 100 deals per year. And our member asked me why we've innovated the way we have at DealMachine, why we came out with unlimited contact info, why we were able to improve on the skip tracing data accuracy with the private investigator tool, becoming 50% more accurate than any other source of phone number information. So all the behind the scenes footage is right here, and we'll even give you a sneak peek as to what's coming next.
All right. We were at Collective Genius, and I happened to run into David Lecco, one of the founders of DealMachine, who's an amazing guy and actually somebody I follow and somebody I really respect their business practices, somebody who we use DealMachine all the time. It's one of the first things that we preach to people who are starting out in real estate, saying like, hey, what should I do? I say, start driving for dollars. And you reinvented this whole business. I'll give you credit single-handedly. I know you have a partner. I know you got other things. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so this was 8 years ago, and I was working for somebody and putting about 60 hours in per week.
What were you doing?
I had made a software, and he bought it from me for $10,000, and I went to work for him. So I had created the software, but I didn't know how to get people to use it, and it was for fraternity recruitment. It was right after college, right after I had that experience.
Where'd you go to college?
Missouri S&T in Rollin, Missouri. So I did engineering there.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. I didn't even know before we talked that you're from St. Louis, Missouri.
I'm from St. Louis, that's right.
And now I'm living in Kansas City. You're living in Austin, and you're investing in Indianapolis.
Correct. So the reason why I moved to Indianapolis was because all the fraternity sorority headquarters are in Indianapolis.
Okay.
So I moved out there.
For the whole country?
Yeah, like 50% of them. They're all concentrated there. It's a big nonprofit headquarters city.
Okay.
And that's due to the American Red Cross. They like lobbied to get some preferential like nonprofit, tax treatment and whatnot.
Okay.
That attracted a lot of nonprofits. So a lot of those headquarters are in Indianapolis.
Awesome. So you moved to Indianapolis with the goal of, obviously what you did was successfully build an app and sell it for $10,000. What was the whole?
I mean, yeah, that was after a year and a half of work, right?
I knew
that was a great deal. But
for the guy who bought it,
of course, yes. And I was making 70. I took a pay cut of $50,000 a year to work for him.
Right.
But I knew that when I'm young, watch the poll there. When I'm young, that putting in the time was the most valuable thing. The things that I would learn from watching how this guy was able to grow a business and help solve a need, I knew that was going to be valuable for me. So I wasn't too worried about making the most money early on. And in real estate, we always give that advice too. It's like, hey, when you're starting out, find a way to help somebody that you meet at a RIA.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Yeah. So it was a similar type of mindset that I had. And I was, even though it was not a lot, $50,000 a year, I was saving 50% of it because I knew that time was on my side for investments, right? So I had 3 roommates, a rusty car, and I put 60 hours a week working for this guy. It was great.
I like your DNA already. Like, yeah. So people who see you online, they see the sports cards. They don't see the fact that you were saving your money. Are you still what I would call budget friendly? Because I'm still cheap.
So it depends on certain things, So I think time is the most valuable thing for me.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I pay somebody that comes and cooks meals so that I follow a certain diet. And the cost ends up being like $500, sometimes $600 a week, including the food, but also for her to just come and cook, right? So that's not cheap. It's like $2,000. Yeah, it's food a month, but the alternative is that I cook it. I don't want to spend time doing that. Or I Uber Eats it, and it's just not going to be as healthy, right?
So how much is an average Uber Eats meal? It's like $30.
Yeah, honestly,
Let's go on this side.
when you figure that out and the extra fees and stuff, it gets quite expensive. So I'm not budget on everything. I've allowed myself to spend on some stuff. But yeah, I don't want to be stupid with money and a lot of. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of how I've viewed things. Some things I'll definitely spend money on.
So when you went to Indianapolis, you started this other fraternity business. What gave you the real estate bug?
Yeah, so the guy who owned that company, well, I noticed I was working 60 hours a week, but he was not. He was working like 4. And, he had another company that existed already that was complementary. It was a coaching business. Fraternity headquarters would hire his business to help them grow. And so it was very complementary to the software. But I noticed I'm just killing myself and he's not. So eventually I was like, well, what's he doing differently? Obviously he owns the business and I don't. So that was a key thing I learned was like, well, if you own it, eventually others can be doing the ground level work.
Right.
He also had 5 rental properties, which seemed like a lot at the time.
Right.
And I asked him about that because I had been putting in money into my Roth IRA, maxing that out, and then had additional retail stock market account where I was buying index funds.
So this is like all of your kind of like, hey, these are the right things to do. This is what I've been told to do.
Yeah.
Max out your 401k, max out your Roth, save your money, make good investments. And so now you see this guy who's got a little bit of property, a lot of free time, and you're noticing that you're busting your ass for this guy. So where does the switch take place?
I guess a little bit of resentment built over time.
Ooh, I love that.
So it led me to ask him after 2 years. I kind of realized I've learned as much as I can in this job. I also feel a bit burned out. I need to put my focus into something that will be beneficial to me in that regard. But anyway, the whole curiosity about his rental properties, he's like, well, the stocks can go up and down. Like you probably noticed that if you've invested over the last few years.
Oh yeah.
And in the real estate, as long as you buy it right, the rent always goes up. The value of the property always goes up. And you can cash flow every month, let the property pay for itself. And that cash flow that you get can grow over time. And so that's really why I chose real estate. So I went looking for answers. I got Rich Dad Poor Dad. I went to a meetup. I was a little bit discouraged because the guy's like, well, I got these deals in 2008. There's not really that many good deals now. But looking back, I started buying my rentals 8 years ago, and it was not a crash or anything like that. But, if you looked at my portfolio, you'd have the same discouragement. You'd be like, oh, shit, man, David had such good deals 8 years ago.
He's a lucky guy.
But now it's what I realize is as long as you do buy it right so it cash flows, dude, the best thing is just letting time do its thing, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I always say this. In real estate, time is on your side.
Yeah.
Because all your big fuck-ups, like, if you just wait long enough, they'll end up looking like an amazing investment.
Yeah.
I bought properties in 2005 at the height of the market in Las Vegas. It took me 17 years to get out of them, but they did come back.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, if I would have held on for probably 20 years,
Yeah.
I actually would have done pretty good. But I wanted to get out of those deals badly.
So
Let's go sit in the shade so we don't...
it's hot. Yeah. So for me,
So you were saying, okay, so real estate over time has been a better investment than stocks that go up and down and don't provide cash flow.
that was my hypothesis.
Right.
And I looked up to this guy. He had stuff figured out that I didn't yet. But it set me on a path to go do what he did, so that way I could stop putting in 60 hours a week for peanuts. And eventually, he was like, hey, we need to increase your salary, but I was already on a path to doing my own things, so we ended up splitting ways. But the key thing that I, in real estate, was told was to go look for rundown houses, because I was looking at what was listed for sale, and none of that would cash flow.
Right.
And I noticed that. So I went looking for rundown houses. And ultimately, I wrote down 40 addresses over 2 months. I saw that one of them was being constructed on.
Yeah.
And I thought, I had this on my list, man. That was my house. And I saw somebody had just bought it. Well, I hadn't even reached out yet. Okay. So I knew I needed to change, because obviously they're not going to sell me anything if I haven't reached out. So that was where what turned into DealMachine was just like a widget on my phone I created that following weekend, because I had some software skills. It was a basic app where I could pin the house. It would tell me who owned it from the county record, and then I could
You create that in a week.
I could have mail sent. I mean, yeah, it was a very basic app.
I don't care if it's basic or not, dude. You're not giving yourself any justice. Shit, there's an app on the weekend that could pin the app from the parcel number, and send out a piece of mail.
Yeah, I mean, it was nothing like it is now, but it was just just really, really basic.
They just see you in solitary confinement.
I can't do that anymore. I mean, I've been out of the coding game because ultimately I had a best friend who was such a great software developer. I asked him to be. Ultimately, I realized about a year into me using this little widget. That somebody who worked for Alpine Property Group in Indianapolis named Brittany Wicks, she hosted a meetup every month. Okay. She came to buy properties at the auction and help new wholesalers understand how to get a deal so she could buy them from them too. And so I showed her at this meetup. I was like, yeah, I've been using this thing. And she's like, well, I'll spend $1,000 to try any new marketing method. Let me get a hold of that. I was like, this is free. It's not on the App Store, but I'll figure out how to get it on your phone. So I had to come up with a name and put it on the App Store. It was a free app. And I was like, I'll charge you $1.75 of mail. You can bulk buy some mail, to $1,000.
Yeah.
So that was the deal we did. And that's when I realized, like, man, I'm not even trying to sell it, but it's people who are serious about this business. They're always looking for an edge. It seems like a good idea because driving for dollars was a very common advice. But there just wasn't an app to help streamline that process.
You changed the game, bro.
Thanks, man.
I've been investing in real estate since 2002, driving for dollars actively since 2013. And I thought it was advanced when we could take digital notes versus writing it down. Like DealMachine has changed the game. And in fact, it has come so far. I think I bought it when it was first going in Vegas. Like, you'd have to go look at my account originally to see what it was. But I told you, when I kind of shut down my business in Vegas and moved to Kansas City, I met with a wholesaler, one of your co-hosts on your podcast.
Yeah, Ryan
Haywood. And I'm like, where are you getting all these deals from? He's like, I just use this app. And I was like, instantly, I'm like, okay, well, I'm back on that app because apparently that's working really well out here in Missouri. And at that point in time, the technology had changed so much. So in just the 2 years since I hadn't used it, and now, tell me where you're at right now with it currently.
Right. So 8 years in, started with driving for dollars, have expanded to being a data provider. And the biggest reason why people are coming to us now, I think I said, we've grown 44% year to year. And that's in year 8 of being in business. So it's typically harder to grow when you're bigger, and you're more established. So it's been great. A huge reason why that's happening is because we came out with unlimited contact info. So if anybody is cold calling or texting, they're using skip tracing services because you get the phone number. It typically would spend like 6 or 10 cents or even 15 cents.
Can we back up a little bit for people who are brand new to wholesaling and stuff? They don't know what skip tracing is. They don't know kind of what your software does, because a lot of times, just to let people who are listening or watching right now know, is typically, you'd have to go in, you'd have to create a list, you'd have to import that list, and then you have to skip trace that list, which means you have to find out their name, phone numbers, email address, or what are likely to be their name, phone numbers, and email address. And then you'd have to go and upload that and mail it. Now, what does DealMachine allow you to do?
Yeah, if you look up a property, it's pre-matched to what the person is who owns the property, what their age is, what their household income is, what other properties they own, and then most importantly, their phone number and their email address and their relatives, right? So it's pre-matched. You don't have to spend extra money to get that information. It's actually included in the monthly fee of DealMachine, which starts at $99. So if you're skip tracing $10,000 a month, that costs you over $1,000.
Right.
Traditionally. Yeah. So you could save $900 a month by just having your DealMachine account lets you export $10,000 per month, right? So the savings get bigger if you're a bigger player and you skip trace even more. But that's what's great about it. And here's the kicker is, like, it's also 50% more accurate than other providers, because in testing we've done, like 33% of properties, they don't have a skip tracing match. And so when that happens, we will provide you a list of every person with that owner's name in the United States. So they're in that list, and we prioritize it based on, well, where do they live? What's their area code? Does it seem like that's more likely the property owner? So it's called the private investigator tool. You could get that list. There's nowhere else you can get that in DealMachine. So it helps you close that gap of the properties you'd normally not have info for. skip tracing it. So it's really powerful. That's why people are just coming over right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like we do use all types of software, but the one that I tell everybody is the first one that you want to download. And if you're watching this, listening to this, or whatever, it's like if you're a brand new investor, exactly what you just said is look for distressed house, send them a freaking postcard, and then if you want to be aggressive, which you should be, is now you can call them. Before, that would be a little bit frustrating, I'm sure, for people to have to go and use this software and then go to that software and do whatever else. Now they just go to your software. They've got everything that they need in one spot.
Right. Well, yeah. So if you're just getting started, there's somebody local to the Austin market that I've become friends with. Their daughter's graduating college, and daughter was interested in doing fashion, but she wasn't getting any calls back on jobs. I mean, that's a tough industry to go into, right? So that was just like a conversation when she was asking advice. I was like, I mean, my passion is race car driving, but even in the pro level like NASCAR, a lot of those drivers pay to be there. So it's like if your passion is fashion, being a really successful fashion person is very difficult, unless you're some type of prodigy. So find a profession that can earn you money, and then you can spend money on whatever that hobby is or that passion is. So she was like, well, how do I do wholesaling real estate? Seems like you can make a lot of money that way.
Yeah.
And so, and wanted to share this for anybody who's graduating, feels pressure from their parents, I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. This isn't working out. She took 500 houses that hadn't paid taxes on the outskirts of Austin, 20-minute around the perimeter.
Okay.
It's not really pressure from flipping houses, but a lot of non-updated homes, right?
Right.
You can find that. So she spent out $500. So that would mean 50 cents a postcard. So she's probably sent mail to 1,000 properties that hadn't paid their taxes. So, and that's how she's getting started. To do this after college, right? She's graduating this month.
So with DealMachine and the software changing, how did you guys decide to go with offering that? Was that going from user feedback for the phone numbers, or how are you continue to make all these improvements?
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to continue innovating, and we realize that is the true power of providing value as a software. Really, a lot of softwares in the industry have been built by real estate investors exclusively, and they build the software like you would build a house, right? Where you pay to build it, and then you just sit back and collect your rent for 50 years. I don't think that's how software works.
That's a very good.
And I think that's why we've been able to grow, beyond some others in the marketplace, because we've continued to always innovate and improve it. Every 3 weeks, if you look on the iTunes App Store, you could see our history of updates. It's every 3 weeks since the beginning of when we started. So it's about doing that in a way that's not disruptive.
Yes.
To using the software.
I hate when they do
this. When you make a huge change.
Yeah.
And Facebook used to do this in the beginning days too, right? Huge overhaul, everyone's pissed. I mean, they still kept using the software, but nowadays, Facebook doesn't really roll out updates that are that disruptive. Right. I mean, I haven't heard that in years.
No.
So it's all about making sure that the update is very thoughtful, very easy to use still, and thoroughly tested before rolling that out. And that includes getting actual people to figure out if that's good or better off than it was before. So through that thought process, yeah, I mean, the business model of skip tracing, it just seemed like, how would you make that better? If you could offer it for free in the included price. Yeah. And when you have all the data like we do, we're not reselling, we're not reselling somebody else's API, which is a transactional lookup for each property. Then we can do more interesting things with it because we have all the data in our own database. So we could pre-match it to the homes. We could provide you a list of all the people with the same owner's name. So if you don't get a match, you can look up everybody in the U.S. and their phone number that has that same owner's name. So that's why we're able to do that.
All right, so API, what is it?
Stands for Application Programming Interface. It's just how softwares can communicate with each other, right? So a lot of the traditional skip tracing where you pay 10 cents per lookup, that's because the software company is paying someone else 8 cents for that lookup, right? And they're marking it up a little bit. That's traditionally how everybody has done skip tracing. So API is just a general software term that means two applications are talking to each other.
Yeah, because usually you'll see an API and it's oh, that's for developers. They can go in there and do their thing or whatever like that.
Join us for our groundbreaking 3-night live event July 1st through 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where you can be among the first to see the latest innovations in real estate technology coming to DealMachine. We'll have your questions answered live, and you'll also get discounts that are solely available for live attendees. Go to DealMachine.com/unveiled to reserve your spot.
Another question. So one thing that I get really excited about talking to you, David, is that like most people who do software, the software thing that they build is not for themselves. They just build it to make money. And you build it for yourself. And so as an owner user, you're constantly looking at it as an investor, not just as the guy who runs DealMachine or as 50% of the person who runs DealMachine. Right. You're looking at it as, hey, how do I make this better for myself? Because you're still actively investing.
For sure. Yes.
So talk to me about like what does your active investing looks like, and how do you see that growing, and how do you continue to keep the edge against the competition? Because I'm sure there's competition coming your way.
Well, one of the competition got bought by a title company, and then they haven't updated their software since then. So we're pretty good there. And then I don't know what happened with a couple of the other companies, but I haven't seen much from them either.
Yeah.
That were traditionally like big names, right? So for at the moment, I think that the best defense is a strong offense.
For sure.
And we've learned a lot about how to do that over 8 years, right?
Yeah.
Things you don't want to do is you don't want to make big changes that confuse and upset people or that miss, and they're not as good to use as you thought they were.
Right.
Using it myself has always driven historically like what we should do next.
Right.
We've got office hours 4 days a week, and so that product team like attends those calls, right? It's just like real people that are asking questions. So
right.
we're always very much speaking to the investing. On my side, I've done 8 deals this year, and when I started out, I didn't have a lot of money. I was making $50,000 a year.
Right.
You buy a rental property on the retail market, and you run out of money.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like $150,000 property requires about $30,000 down. So I needed to go off market, find good enough deals,
right?
So that way I could force appreciation by fixing it up, maybe adding the square footage or just improving what the inside looked like,
right?
So that I have so much equity I can refinance, get all that money back out that I put into it by purchasing it and fixing it up, called the BRRRR strategy: buy, rent, renovate, refinance, repeat.
Yep.
So I have 19 deals.
Nice.
And I've worked hard to make sure like 75% of those deals were like BRRRR strategy deals where I got the money back out.
Awesome.
And at first, I bought a property for $4,000, renovated it for $65,000.
Yeah.
Then it was worth $120,000 through that forced appreciation, and I could refinance it, get $75,000 back, or $80,000 back, and then I could go do the next deal.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what my investing looks like. About 19 properties, $4 million in value. Sweet spot's like $160,000. It rents for $1,600 a month, so it meets the 1% rule.
Nice.
And yeah, it's like just what I've been doing. And I took a break for a little bit when DealMachine was really growing in the early years, and I've been excited to get back to it in the last like 9 months.
Where does your drive come from?
Yeah, my parents were concerned that I was going to lose it all by going in on a business, real estate, and that was really cool to show them. When it was successful, then I treated them to some trips, took them to Las Vegas for the first time, and that was really fun, right? So that's how it started.
Right.
Now I think one of the things I've learned from my race car driving coach is we're only here to win first place. And he's like, if you've won enough, nothing else really matters. So we're not here to roll around in second place. And he's just one of the most committed people ever.
Yeah.
And if I have like the rare race where I didn't hold anything back because I was scared of like hitting somebody. Obviously, if you go too hard, you might lose control and hit somebody. But there's no better feeling than knowing you gave it actually 100%.
Right.
Like, it's just a great feeling.
Yeah.
Like, it's way better than winning first but not having to try that hard. Right. It's way better to know, I got second, but dude, I gave it 100% my all. And so that's like the present moment now, is just how great that feels to have truly given 100% of what you're capable of. And it's just like an irreplaceable feeling that I've just realized from the way my coach is.
What's next for you? Personal goals, business goals? Like, where do you see all those things coming?
Dude, I mean, things on the personal side and business side are fantastic. I mean, we're at 44% year growth now. I'd love to help a lot more people. Actually, one of the challenges I took was to learn social media.
Okay.
So much of our business was through people like yourself who have been able to communicate in a way that helps people build the financial freedom that they want, quit their job, 10x their income. So I took on the challenge of learning social media myself. So I'm
you grow pretty fast,
dude. I've had a few hits this year, but before that, I posted 4 videos a day all last year.
Yeah,
4 videos a day, dude. It was like 900 posts, right?
Yeah,
and all those at bats, so to say, is like what taught me things that work and things that don't. So that's something I'm really proud of and excited to just help more people that way.
That's awesome. I'd love to see you do that. I was like, oh man, this guy's going all in on this next,
dude. At some point,
I just know
I just know I need a challenge. Okay, so
yeah,
that was like an amazing challenge for me. The best part was things that I could learn that are valuable in my life in any other way. What's more valuable than how to communicate, right, with a seller or it's on social media? What's more valuable than how to communicate? Life is just communication. So I was very excited about that.
Yeah, and it's funny to learn like human psychology is really taught through social media, because you learn, like, you say one thing just a way that you would normally say, and you're like, oh, that really triggered people. Like, I remember the first time I was wearing a backpack walking through Home Depot, and I said, we buy the cheap stuff. And they're like, slumlord, boom, boom, boom. I'm sure you've had a video that has gone viral like that. So it's continue to try to grow your business brand, your personal brand, continue to try to help people. And you've grown 44% year after year after year. And you've got a great staff. You guys do great training. I can tell you, as somebody, I just randomly approached David. He's a totally just an easygoing guy. I mean, we just talk about how competitive you are, but you are also easygoing. Like, so, like, as somebody who's just, I say you're humble. I say you're hardworking, and that's hard to find for people who are young like yourself and have had a lot of early success. So I just can't see what's next in your chapter. I'm sure you have some pretty big, ambitious goals as well. All right, so David, just to kind of summarize things, I really appreciate you taking the time. Number one, we're going to hook you guys up with a free affiliate link so you can check it out. Real estate's changed my life. I know it's changed your life. You've invented an app because of it. So we're out here at a mastermind event. You're obviously still highly involved in your business and trying to get better at it every day. So you can tell this is somebody who truly cares. And I know from personal experience, we have a mutual friend, Ryan Haywood, who is, you guys have done a podcast together. You guys are constantly giving back. What is that podcast? How can they find you on all your socials?
Yeah, DealMachine podcast. We've done 150 episodes, all specifically on wholesaling.
Yeah.
So if you're looking into wholesaling as a business model, that's the podcast to check out. How much do you cover a wholesaling versus other types? Like, I know you buy a lot of property.
Yeah, we cover a fair amount of wholesaling, but we don't cover all wholesaling.
Got it. Yeah. So we just made a decision to stick purely on that. And it's called the DealMachine podcast.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. You guys crank out episodes all the time.
We do 3 a week
with people. You were doing like 3 a day, weren't you?
Well, that was social media posts. But on the podcast, we've done 3 a week since a year and a half ago. So 150 episodes. So it's a mixture of interviewing guests that have had success, doing 1 to 10 wholesale deals, how they got those deals. Ryan will do a solo episode on maybe something that's happened with him, and I've done some as well.
Final question. I know I said last final question, but just one final question. If you could interview anybody on your podcast, dead or alive, for yourself personally, who would it be?
Dude, I've interviewed people who are very advanced. I feel like the best way to learn is with somebody who's 2 steps ahead of you.
Right.
Actually, so we've tried really. The next person I'd want to interview is you, who's actually listening to this and done about 3 deals. So just hit me up, DealEcho on Instagram, if that's you. I'd love to talk with you specifically on wholesale deals.
Awesome. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.